Hi, if you haven't heard the last message, then you ought to have a quick listen. But I wanted to look a little bit about how this church looked. This early called out people that were strong in their identity in God, knew God was believing in them, knew they were loved, and knew that they could love with this self-abandoning love for others. Knew that they could seek the kingdom because the kingdom was just within them, and they didn't have to trust in their own righteousness, their own good deeds, but actually they could trust on God, Jesus' good deeds and what he did, because he became their righteousness, their right standing with him. Scroll through and I do a little message on righteousness as well. And this group of people would have, once the persecution hit in Jerusalem, people went off to different places all over, and a group arrived in Antioch and they just started to live there, and all in this close-knit community. They probably lived amongst the Jews, which were already cordoned off from the rest of all the Greeks and the Romans and all the other people with all their gods. And they would have been living in these little communities. Sometimes it says in the end of some of the letters, greet people who meet in this house, and it makes it look like they had church services, but they didn't. Christianity today in our culture is very different to how it was then, and we can't really go back to that in some ways, because they did live on top of each other. They were like in slums. They were really just, everything was a mishmash and a mosh all together, one big mosh pit of life together. No one had any privacy to themselves. And particularly in England, but in the West, we have a lot of privacy. Life is very different. So you can't really go back to that sort of culture in order to get that. But we can still live these principles out today. Because I think as it went on, more and more people were added. It said daily, many were added to their number. Great grace was upon them. Great power from God was upon them. Why? Because they were unleashing this amazing community of positivity and of love and of hope. Jesus was their living hope. He wasn't a dead hope. He wasn't someone they had to try and sacrifice to, even though years later that's what Christianity became. Originally, for the first 200 or 300 years, there were these amazing, radical, loving, hopeful communities of people living under the thumb of the Roman occupation. That was brutal. That was proper oppression that they were living in, and yet somehow these people had a freedom in their hearts that meant that actually that didn't matter. It didn't matter they were under the Romans. They could have been under anybody. It didn't matter. Their king was Jesus. And it didn't mean that they were bad citizens and rebellious against the empire, apart from in one area. What it does mean is that they were free from any fear that was put on them. And fear is the biggie. We know that today. Everyone's fear-mongering today. And yet they were free in their hearts. And they were the freest people on earth, the most loving people on earth, the most hopeful people on earth. And this is why their little communities spread right across the Roman Empire in a way that's just amazing, because they were carrying the true message. They were carrying the real message of Christ is in you, the hope of glory. I hope that was interesting to you, and please share away or make a comment, and I'll see you soon. Bye.